Well, hey everybody, Merry Christmas. Welcome to church. Yeah, amazing. So glad you've joined us this Christmas. And let me say hello to all of our locations, our Middletown church family and Hokessa, and all of you in the room here in Newark, and all of you joining us online. I'm glad you're here, and whether you are new to the whole church thing, or maybe it's been a minute, or this is home, wherever you land, I'm just very, very glad you're here, and I hope you're having a great experience so far. This is Real Church for Real People, which means you do not have to pretend to believe anything that you don't buy into yet. You don't have to pretend that you have it all together yet if you don't, because how many of us actually do have it all together, right? I know the way you drove here. Just kidding. But this is a place where you can experience God and take steps to grow in your faith. So I'm very glad you're here, wherever you land with your spiritual journey. And I do want to take a moment before we get into the message. And first of all, just tell you, this is actually the 15th of 15 Christmas gatherings across our locations. And yeah, it's amazing. Thank God. And I want to say thank you to every one of you who is a part of our J team. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. Almost 1,000 of you who week in and week out use the gifts that God has given you on stage, behind the scenes, in our kids' environments and students, and so many places that you lead. And I'm very, very grateful for you. Would you show some love to the J team? J team, would you show some love to each other? Yeah, I'm proud of every one of you. And so grateful, and I'm grateful to be gathered here on Christmas Eve. Glad to have my family in the room, my beautiful wife, Susie, and my kids in the room. Love them so much. And glad to be with my church family. And you know, this time of year brings up kind of a weird blend of emotions, right? It's a very special time of year in a lot of ways. And we've reached, you know, the climax is Christmas Eve. You know, we've reached the kind of the last part of the waiting that comes with Christmas. But there is a lot of waiting in this season, and I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of waiting. I don't like waiting in line. I don't like waiting in traffic. I don't like waiting on packages to be delivered. I don't enjoy it. And when it comes to even bigger things in my life, more important things that I'm waiting for, when there's a delay, when there's something in my life I really need or want so badly, I can get discouraged at times. I wonder how many of us would say, all of our locations today, you can participate in this, how many of us would say by a show of hands that we've ever had anything in our life that we wanted so badly that it hurt? Like we could feel it, just this sense of, man, there's a gap between where I am and where I want to be. Maybe it's in a relationship or something with our health. Maybe we were desperate for a second chance or waiting on what we hoped was a good report. And when there's a delay, it brings these questions up in our lives. You know, questions like, what's the meaning of all this? And is there hope for me? Am I loved? Am I seen? Does my life count? Am I going to be okay? I mean, when you think about Christmas, what do you think of first? Probably on the short list for a lot of us would be gifts, right? Presents. You say, don't be so materialistic. You thought it. And it's just a big thing in our culture. We give gifts at Christmas time. For most of us, at home, under the tree right now, there are presents that are wrapped. Or at the home that we're going to visit over the next 24 hours, there are presents that are wrapped. And the problem with those presents, of course, is they're wrapped. And so they're just out of our reach for now. We've had to wait. We may still have to wait a little bit longer. And when we're kids, you know, it's obvious how impatient we are. But the truth is, sometimes as adults, we struggle. Sometimes as students, it's hard to wait for things. And life can be that way. We have expectations that are still wrapped, and we're looking at them and we're like, is that what I think I'm going to get what I want and need out of life? I think I'm going to get what I'm asking for, but you never know. It could be socks. Could be a letdown. And how many of us would admit that when we were kids, we ever unwrapped a present and then wrapped it back up so nobody would know? You know who you are, and I know who I am. When I was a kid, my mother bought me a video game system for Christmas one year, and she hadn't wrapped it yet, but she had it in the back of her closet. And when she was out, I snuck into her room, got it out of the closet, opened it up, played with it, repackaged it, put it back in the closet. I'm so sorry, Mom. But if you need any Christmas espionage, I'm your man, okay? Like I can pull it off. We do not like to wait. And some of us came to church today waiting for some things. There's a delay, there's a gap, we're waiting on on things that are still wrapped. They're still just out of our reach. And for some of us, we've got this question, am I ever gonna get to unwrap what I've been asking for, what I've been praying for maybe, what I've been hoping for? And I've got a question for you this Christmas that I'm gonna tell you right out of the gate, you're not gonna like. I know, I only get one Christmas a year, like as a pastor I should know better, but I'm gonna ask you a question you're not gonna like. The reason I know you're not gonna like it is because I don't like it. And here's the question, what if while we're waiting on God, God is actually waiting on us? What if God is waiting on us? So for all of us who've ever wanted something really big, really important, there's a woman in the Bible who knows what this is like. We're gonna look at her story this Christmas. Her name is Hannah. And when we meet Hannah in the Old Testament of the Bible in a book called 1 Samuel, she has shown up at church and she is honestly kind of a mess on the inside. She is in a desperate place. And here's what we read. This is 1 Samuel chapter 1. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. Why is Hannah in deep anguish? Well, she wants something that she can't have. She wants a baby and she can't have one. And this isn't new for her. This is something she's been dealing with for a long time, and she can't have children, and that's all she wants, so badly that it hurts. And so she is praying to God in this deep anguish. Her heartbreak has reached a place where the only thing she knows to do is to come to church and to just wipe the little smile off her face that we sometimes put there to pretend that everything's okay when it's not, and get honest with God. And she's pouring out her heart to God, and I want you to notice what she prays. And she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, in other words, O God who is large and in charge, I know you are God. If you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. You ever promise God something in the heat of the moment? Anybody been there? How many of us have driven by the Powerball billboard? We've had a little conversation with God. God, if you would just hook a brother up. Oh, Lord of heaven's armies. You know, we're like, God, we said something like, God, if you let me win the Powerball, someone told me, I thought it was 1.4 billion. Someone just told me a few hours ago, 1.7 billion. And I think like it's tonight, right? Like tonight's the night. So, maybe we told God that, if you let me win the Powerball, God, it's going to be a good day for you. Like my motives are pure. I don't want it for myself. I just want to be so generous, God. Sometimes people will say, Pastor, if you just pray that I win the Powerball, I'm going to hook the church up. And I'm like, okay, all right. Maybe some of us have prayed, God, if you just do this one thing for me, I'll never ask you for anything again in my life. Or maybe some of us can relate to this one. God, if you just get me out of this, like if they just don't press charges, like, God, I swear I will never put myself in this situation again. These are heat of the moment promises. Well, Hannah prays, God, if you will give me a son, I will give him back to you. And this is actually not a heat of the moment promise. She's been thinking about this, and we're going to see that in a few minutes. This is not a rash promise. So the question is, why would anybody who'd been waiting for something for what felt like forever, wanted it so badly that it hurt, say, God, if you give me this, I'm actually going to give it back to you? Well, the answer is someone who understands or is starting to understand what God is like and what God is up to. Because for all of us, whatever we believe about God and prayer, all of us would say, I'm sure, if there is a God out there somewhere, I could use his help in some area of my life. And the good news is God invites us to ask. He wants to hear our requests. There's nothing wrong with asking God for what we need and for those things that we desperately desire. You've come to the right place. You can ask God for things that you want him to do in your life anywhere, but there's something about being gathered together like this. Jesus actually said, if 2 or 3 of you gather in my name and you agree, man, I'm gonna answer that prayer. So there's something about being in God's presence like this, and it's okay to ask. And Hannah asks, she says, give me, God, I pray, a son. That's what I want, so badly that it hurts. But then she says, God, I think that in this process of waiting, I've started to learn something about you. And I know that I am asking you for something, but I'm becoming aware that you are asking something of me as well. And I think what you want to know, God, I want to know when I'm going to have a son. You want to know if I give you what you're asking for, can you give it back? If I give you what you're asking for, can you give it back? Then why would God want to know that? I mean, why would he even want it back? We'll get there. But this is God for some of us saying, hey, if I give you the relationship that you have said you really want, can you give it back to me? Will you trust me with it when it gets difficult? You say, how do you know my relationship is going to get difficult? Because it's a relationship, and that's what they do. Anybody who's been in one for any length of time knows that eventually there's a pressure point. And God is saying, if I give you what you're asking for, will you trust me when it gets difficult, or will you try to control the outcome? In other words, will you turn the gift into your God? If I give you the job that you have really been asking me for, the opportunities in your career that you want, the favor in your education or whatever it may be, can you give it back? Will you surrender it to me every day? Or will you get to the place where you begin to take your success for granted? Or even become resentful that I didn't give you a better job? Can you give it back? If I open this door for you that you're praying that I will open, do you have the kind of character to be able to see everything that's on the other side of it as a way to honor me? Or will you cling to it for yourself? Will you begin patting yourself on the back for being such a great door opener? If I give you what you're asking for, are you the kind of person who can give it back? Now, something interesting happens in Hannah's story, all right? So she shows up at church, she's in deep anguish, she's crying out to God, and there's a priest there by the name of Eli who sees her and assumes she's drunk. Now, it's another message for another time, but he's not really a great priest. And he confronts her. He's like, why'd you come to church drunk? She's like, I'm not drunk. I'm just very discouraged. I've reached a place where I can't think about anything else. I haven't been pouring myself drinks. I've been pouring my heart out to God. And when Eli hears that, he says, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. Now, that is the most vague promise ever. Okay? He doesn't say when it's going to happen. It's not even clear that he knows what she's been praying for. But watch this. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. Hold on a minute. Why is she no longer sad? She's not pregnant yet. Nothing has changed in her circumstances. She's not any closer to the answer than she was before. The things she's been asking for still wrapped out of her reach. Why is she no longer sad? Well, something has changed on the inside of Hannah that is more important than what she has been praying for God to change on the outside. And she's begun to understand that God sees her and God hears her and God is faithful and he will provide what she is believing him for at the right time. And now she can have joy in the midst of the delay. She can wait well because she has this promise from God that he sees her and that everything's going to be okay. And we can have the same confidence in our lives. We can leave church this Christmas even while we are waiting on something that's still wrapped with this deep joy on the inside of us. We can learn how to make it through the delay without getting discouraged because we know that God hears us. How does that happen? God does a supernatural work in the life of everyone who fully puts their trust in Jesus, his son, and gives us the joy to be able to wait well. The problem arises when we want God to change things more than we're willing to allow God to change us. So we pray things like, God, I need you to fix my marriage. And God says, well, actually, I was kind of going to take the next few years and fix you. Which ironically would give your marriage its best shot. We say, God, I need my boss to move to Nebraska. and within 48 hours, if at all possible. And God says, well, how about this? How about I transform your character so that you learn how to deal with difficult people, because I'm God and I know all things, and I happen to know your boss is not the last jerk you're going to meet. So what if I change you? And we're like, no, God, Nebraska. God wants to do something on the inside of us that changes us. And so God in his grace, doesn't feel like grace, but God in his grace, watch this, sometimes he lets us wait because he wants to know, if I give you what you're asking for, can you give it back? Do you just think you need me until the wrapping paper's on the floor and you have what you were asking for? Or have you realized that you just need me for the rest of your life? Time goes by. God answers Hannah's prayer. She gives birth to a son. She names him Samuel. That's who this book of the Bible we're reading from is named after. And a few years later, she keeps her promise. She brings him back to church, the tabernacle at the time, and she offers him back to God. She comes back to the place where she prayed for God to intervene, and she dedicates Samuel back to him. Now, what does that mean? Well, Hannah does not bring Samuel back to church because he has behavioral problems, okay? She's not like, God, he's a dud. Let's try again. That's not what's going on. In the Old Testament, if you were dedicated to God the way that Hannah dedicates Samuel, you grew up in the tabernacle. You lived on site, which means that Hannah brings her toddler to the tabernacle and says, he's no longer going to live with me under my protective care. He actually now belongs to God. Now, this is the New Testament, and so this doesn't happen anymore, so take your kids home with you. Man, that's what I was planning to dedicate them to the Lord. But for Hannah, this is a big deal. And here's what she says. Listen to her words. She says, I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he'll belong to the Lord his whole life. Now, why does this matter? It's a good story. It's inspiring. You go, Hannah, atta girl. But why does it matter? What does it have to do with Christmas? Well, it turns out God does not give Hannah a son just for Hannah. There's a bigger plan at work. See, Hannah has this son, Samuel, and it turns out the delay, part of God's plan. Hannah's promise that she eventually is able to make because her character has shifted, which, by the way, if you read her story, God actually gave her more sons and daughters. She didn't know that was going to happen at the time, but God gave her more sons and daughters because now he knew he could trust her character. And it turns out there's a bigger plan at work. Samuel grows up at church, becomes a spiritual leader in the nation of Israel, and when he's an old man, long after Hannah has passed, God calls Samuel to select the next king of Israel. Samuel goes to a guy named Jesse's house because God leads him there, says one of Jesse's sons is going to be king. And so Samuel says, Jesse, you got sons? And Jesse's like, I got sons for days. And he brings all the sons in, and these are sons. I mean, these are like Instagram-worthy sons. They're tall, handsome. They're one son after another. Jesse's like, check this son out. I mean, this is one of my best sons right here. And Samuel's like, no, it's not that son. He keeps swiping through the sons. It's not that son. It's not that son. And finally, he's like, Jesse, you got any other sons? And Jesse's like, we got one kid. He's out in the field right now because that's where we prefer him. His name is David, and he has ADD. I see myself in scripture sometimes. My middle name is David, and I have ADD. And so that's just how I imagine the story went. And Jesse's like, he's probably not king because he's kind of a mess. And Samuel's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Went through all your sons. None of them are king. God says there's got to be a king here in your house. And so Jesse's like, get David. David comes in. You know, he's got like his holes in his jeans. He's been playing in the mud. You know, his hair's all over the place. He's like, you know, and this is just the way I envision it. And Samuel, the Spirit of God moves on Samuel, and he says, nobody else sees it, but Samuel says, God chose me to be the only person in the nation of Israel to be able to see that you are supposed to be king. David becomes king of Israel. And 1,000 years later, if you trace David's lineage, God says, David, you'll always have a king on the throne. 1,000 years, trace it. You meet a man who is often called the Son of David. We call him Jesus, and he's the reason we're in the room. But Hannah doesn't know any of that when she's praying for a son. All she knows is, I want a baby so badly that it hurts. But she's able to reach a place where she begins to trust that God has a bigger plan, even though she can't see it at the time. So something shifts and she stops just praying for a son and she begins to say, God, I sense that there is a bigger purpose. I don't understand it. I can't see it. I just know that I'm in deep anguish. But if you give me a son, I'm going to give him back to you, because Hannah realizes that for all the questions that she has for God while she's waiting, God has a question for her. If I give you what you're asking for, can you give it back? And that is where Christmas comes in, because centuries later, God gave another son as a gift from the line of David, who was chosen by Samuel, who was birthed by Hannah. And the world is in darkness, under a curse, waiting, separated from its creator, until Joseph and Mary, unknowns, show up in a little town called Bethlehem. And while they're there, the time came. 1,000 years. How many would say that's longer than I am usually willing to wait? But the time came for her baby to be born, the baby God saw when Hannah was at church. Mary gave birth to her firstborn son, Jesus, and she wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger. Fascinating, isn't it? That the time finally comes for Jesus to be born, and Mary, it's such a human instinct. The first thing she does is take this little 7-pound, 6-ounce promise and wrap him in an effort to protect him from the world and the darkness and the elements. But it turns out he can't be protected because he belongs to a bigger plan. And somehow Mary knows that. And even as she lays that little promise in the manger, she hears the whisper of heaven asking, can you give him back? And sure enough, a few days later, his parents took him to Jerusalem to present him to present him to the Lord. God, you gave us this miracle. We give it back. God is into regifting. Now, I know some of us are going, oh, what a coincidence. Me too. No. The kind of regifting we're into is we like to regift things we don't want. Let me tell you something about God. This may not be your favorite thing about God, but it is the truth about him. God will always find the thing we want the most and ask, can you give it back? Why? Because he doesn't want the gift to be God. He wants to be God. And he's always at work in a way that is greater than we can see. So Hannah with Samuel, Mary with Jesus. And you ask anybody, and in the room right now, lots of people, all of our locations, thousands of people in our community of faith, millions of people around the world, hundreds of millions of people who have put their faith in Jesus. You know, we all have in common, every single one of us. Our stories are different, our backgrounds are different, it's all different, but we all have this one thing in common, that at some point in our lives, we stopped trying to control the outcome. And we surrendered. And we said, God, whatever it is, however much I think I need it, I give it back. And Mary eventually gives Jesus back to a cross where he's crucified. It's what we remember her for. She receives this amazing promise. She gives him back. Jesus continues the pattern. He gives himself back. Jesus said it this way. He said, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down. Why? For our forgiveness and our healing and our hope, so that we would know that we are seen and we are loved. And there's a meaning to all of this. And our lives count. And we're going to be okay, even when we're waiting for things that are still wrapped. We will not be overwhelmed by discouragement because we have a God who has a bigger plan. All right, so let's make it real this Christmas. For some of you today, you have things in your life that you've been hoping for, you've been wanting, you've been dreaming, you've been reaching for, and they're still wrapped. Right now, they're outside of your reach. You can't get to them. And maybe you came today, maybe even a little bit angry at God, a little bit upset. And I want you to know that God can handle you being angry, all right? The only thing God can't handle is when you stop telling him you're angry. God is not like, I don't do difficult emotions. He's just saying, don't hold me at arm's length. But maybe you're here today and there's something in your life and you're frustrated, it hasn't been realized yet. And you are asking, when are things going to change? You ready? Here's the answer. I have no idea. God bless you. Merry Christmas. And I know it's probably unfulfilling. You're like, hey, man, there are other churches I could go to where the pastor would say, by January 7th. This ain't one of them. I don't know when things are going to change. But you could change right now by the power of God. Something could happen on the inside of you today that I know it's hard to believe this, but is actually more important than anything that God could do on the outside of you. And the reality is, here's what I do know, okay? I know this with growing certainty because I discover it every day of my life. That while you are waiting on God, God is actually waiting on you. He is waiting for you to finally give up your misguided attempts to control your own life. He's waiting on you to stop pretending you know more than he does. And he is waiting on you to surrender your life fully up to him and to give up your plans for his. So our faith grows as we gather, connect, and serve. We didn't make that up, by the way. It's in the Bible. And in January, we're going to gather together, starting January 4th, for a series that we'll call Rooted. And it'll help you build a life that can endure difficult times. It'll help you grow in your faith. And we'll gather and experience God together. We'll start the new year with 21 days of prayer. We do this every year, and it's transformational if you've never been a part of it before. And we'll do it in community. We'll connect to pray together because you weren't meant to do this alone. And we'll ask God to let us unwrap some of his promises in 2026 because God does want to do miraculous things for you and around you. In January, you'll have an opportunity to come to what we call Plugged In, which is 3 simple steps to find your place in God's bigger plan when you serve. Because here's what we believe as a church. Much of our misery comes from the smallness of our perspective. And when you become awakened to what God is doing and how you can be a part of it, your joy will increase. So here's what you got to understand. God is waiting on you. And here's what he wants to know. If I give you what you're asking for, can you give it back? In other words, if today was just to check the box, I went to church at Christmas, it won't mean much. If today was like, well, I got that out of the way, it won't mean much. But if today's a step that leads to another step, that leads to another step, that begins to change who you are from the inside out, then eventually you will unwrap everything God has for you when the time comes. God always keeps his promises. God wants to do something in your life that is bigger even than your life. Put it this way, God's saying, I want to give you what you're really asking for. I just need you to come back and keep coming back. And if you would say today, if you're a follower of Jesus, you would say, I believe in Jesus, but I need the reminder this Christmas. God's been good to me, but there's some things I'm still waiting on, and I need the encouragement to wait well with joy in my spirit, trusting God enough to surrender. If that's you, would you shoot your hand up all over the room, all of our locations? Online, you can participate in this as well. I want to pray it over you. Father, I pray right now over your people, the people who believe in your son, Jesus. I pray that you would renew our spirits this Christmas, that you would renew our hearts today, that you would help us understand that we can trust you with the things we don't understand. God, even if there's a delay, we do not have to give in to discouragement. God, you hear us, you see us, and you will do what you've promised when the time comes. Would you tell him this? God, I trust you. I surrender my life to you all over again. And I give everything I am back to you, who's given it to me in the first place. And while you let God speak to your heart, listen, if you're in the room, one of our locations, you're watching online, and you don't have a real relationship with God yet, and God's drawing you to him, here's what I want you to know. God has not been waiting for you to get your act together. He's not been waiting for you to get your life finally figured out. God knows that if you could have fixed your life on your own, you would have by now. Religion's waiting for you to get your act together. God isn't. God knows you need a supernatural work on the inside of your life that can only happen through faith in his son, Jesus. That's what he wants to do in your life today. And he's been waiting for you to take him up on his invitation to fully surrender to him. And if you want to take that step and begin a real relationship with God, I'd love to lead you in a simple prayer. So I want everyone to join me, open your heart up big to God. And if that's you, if you'd say, today's my day, right where you are, whisper out a prayer of faith, something like this. Jesus, today I surrender my life to you. I believe you died to forgive my sins. And Jesus, I'm asking you to give me the power to live a new kind of life. Save me today. Forgive my sins. Change my life. And from this day forward, Jesus, I will follow you. And if you want to be included in that prayer today, if you would say, today's my day, would you lift your hand and hold it up boldly? If you would say, today's my day to put my faith in Jesus. I'm trusting him with my life. Lift it up high. Thank God. Yes, yes, yes. It's amazing. Yeah. In every room, Middletown and Hockessin. Online, you can type the word faith in the comments. You're taking that step. And for all of you who are, man, I'm proud of you. I'm celebrating that with you today. It's the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. And it can change everything. And I can't wait to see what God does next in your life. We're going to wrap up 2025 in just a moment. We have one more very special moment planned for you, so just sit tight. But while we get ready for that, I want to encourage you to take a moment and fill in that Connect card. You heard at your location today how you can fill that in. And here in Newark, those Connect cards are in the seat back in front of you. Take a moment. If you pray with me, put your faith in Jesus, fill that in. Let us know. You can take that to Journey Central in the cafe in just a few minutes. We have a new believer's Bible that we want to give you as our gift to you to help you grow in your relationship with God. If you're here for the first time, take the next 30 seconds, fill in that Connect card, and you can stop by Journey Central as well. We have a gift for you to say thanks for checking this out and being here today. Now, I believe God is going to do some amazing things in 2026. And this is our last gathering of 2025. And we're here together, and we're going to celebrate and worship God in just a moment. But here's what I want to ask you to do. Would you stand with me all over the room? As we get ready to worship God and for the worship team to lead us one more time, would you put your hands together and let's give Jesus all the praise? Can we do that together?